Chef welcomes you. Chef of Plants, we're going to create a nourishing, rich, plant-based meal today. Actually, I'm going to show everyone how to make a base. I get a lot of raves about my soups and sauces and certain things I prepare. And I think this is the actual secret to why my stews and soups and savory dishes taste so amazing and nutrient rich. My goal is to provide you with a more efficient knowledge of how to incorporate nutrient rich things into your foods and also keep it efficient for you in the kitchen. I think that you should be cooking for an hour or so per meal, maybe dinner a little bit more, depends on whether you're cooking for a family of 2 or 4 or 6, but it's so important these days to be healthy, and we all know that it starts with what we put into our systems. I'm going to teach you how to make something so nutrient rich that you can combat a lot of the toxins that the family is eating and coming in contact with out there. We all know we'd like to see our family detox and then eat nutrient rich from that point on, but these meals that I'm going to teach you to make are so nutrient rich that they will help combat the free radicals and keep your family safe. So this base is something that I recommend you make in bulk, and then you can put some in the fridge and some in the freezer and use some that evening so that you always have it readily available for yourself. And that'll save you so much time in the future. If you make this base every time, you're taking the time to make the base, and then you're taking the time to incorporate it into the meal that you're going to prepare for your family. So I'm going to throw a few tips out there while I'm preparing things for you. And each episode, every Tuesday at 5, we will have a live version, and then we'll upload that so that you can watch it later if that frame doesn't work for you. And with that, I will be giving a few tips here and there. And then if you need any more help, just send us a DM and we will address it on the next show. So first of all, avocado oil. There's a lot of oils on the market today. However, when you heat up avocado oil, the molecule structure doesn't change as much as olive and some of the other coconut and some of the other oils. Coconut oil is excellent to use for like baking products, quick breads and stuff. But when you're sauteing and you're reaching close to a flash point or a flash point on this oil, it's really extremely important that you use something where the molecule structure doesn't transform, because what happens is it soaks into your digestive tract and will cause you health problems down the road. So we're gonna splash, and also try to use as little oil as possible. You can always add some more. At the beginning of the saute, you want to add a little bit more than you would if you're adding it as you go. It's really important that you have the pan hot and the oil hot before you add the vegetables or anything to the pan, because it's going to absorb more of that oil if you add it cold and then warm it up. So we're going to raise that pan to a nice warm temperature. What I've got here is my base. There's a lot of options to add to this. This is just one basic base that I utilize for my soups and stews mainly, but also other savory dishes. I've got a lot of minced onion here. I use a sweet onion. You can use any onion you like. If you use a stronger onion, you use a little bit less, and if you use a sweeter onion, you can use a lot. I've also got some minced celery, some really sliced thin carrot. We also have some fresh minced garlic, really important. I know some folks aren't really hip on garlic out there, but it's important to incorporate it into the diet. You can do a light saute of the garlic, keep the nutrient-rich content still in there without cooking it too much. You don't have necessarily raw garlic if you have a tough time with it, but it is good for you if you're able to. And then my key ingredients is ginger, fresh of course, and fresh turmeric. This can be a little difficult to find. You might have to go to Whole Food stores or order it online, but it's crucial to boosting that nutrient-rich content through the roof. These two ingredients, ginger and turmeric. I know there's a lot of powders and juices and think concentrates you can buy. I highly recommend that you use fresh ingredients. It will make the difference in the antioxidants that you need to combat those free radicals. So we've got our olive oil nice and warm now. We're going to start with the carrots because the carrots take the longest to cook, no matter how you cook them up, no matter how you slice them up, I mean. I've got a little cilantro here that's not a necessity. You can use basil. We've got some rosemary, oregano. We can use any kind of herb. You don't even have to use an herb because I'm going to suggest that you use instead of adding salt and pepper to your base, I'm going to suggest you buy a nice organic bouillon. This is a vegetable bouillon. I get it at Costco. You can buy it almost anywhere. It does have a few questionable ingredients, but they're really not that bad. I think for a bouillon, it's in good standing. It's called Better Than Bouillon. It's just think of this as flavored salt. So we're going to add this at the end, and that's going to help give it all the salt that we need and some additional flavors. I also like to use a lot of hot peppers. Not supplying those today, but even adding just one little hot pepper will increase that flavor, and it's actually really good for you. You can add as much as you like if you like it really spicy, but I think just one or two will make the difference. So here we go. We've got the carrots sauteing, and as soon as we get those done a little bit, we're going to add our celery, then our garlic and onion. I'm going to show you real quick while that's sauteing that we're going to take our onion. A lot of people know this, but in case you don't, the onion runs in layers across. So if you slice the onion in half and take off the little top part on the end, you can just slice it a little bit, not all the way, cutting the onion in half, so that you get a nice open fan and it stays in contact. Because of the layers of the onion, now if you take the onion and you slice it just one more time, you're going to get a really nice minced onion, as you can see. So, get that minced onion going. When you get toward the end, obviously you don't have that anymore, so you're going to just take it, put it on its side, cut it really thin, and then one more time across, and you've got quickly, efficiently, your minced onion. I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it every time. When you're slicing, you want to keep that thumb back behind your fingers. Get into the habit. Like shooting pool, you form this habit, you will not ever get that finger off. So let's keep it behind the fingers. If you want to get a safer tool, you can get a butcher block knife like this, a cleaver, and keep it up against your fingers. Don't lift it up too high. Just lift it up enough above the product. So if we take the celery, we want to go with bias cut against the celery, never like this, unless you're just making some kind of sticks for your kids. So you can cut it in half, line it up like that, and then when you cut it real thin, you're going against the grain so that the fibers in the celery or in ginger, very important, same fibrous material, you want to cut it against the grain before you start chopping it up so that you don't have little fibers and look like little hairs in your soup. It won't hurt you, it just throws people off when they see them and it tastes fibrous in your mouth. So that's good enough on the celery. But it's important you do the same thing with the ginger. Now, I think most people overcook vegetables. And it's important that you do get them tender enough because we're going to puree them all together to make a base. And this is the base, the magic of what makes all of my savory dishes and soups so tasty. If I have it on hand, even if I don't, I usually make a quick version of a base before I start, but it's so nutrient rich This will keep you healthy. So we're going to cook everything fairly al dente, and we're going to put it in the Vitamix and puree it. Add a little bit of water, a little bit of that stock for salt content, puree it into that base, and then we can preserve the base for as long as we like. Recommend that you try to utilize it in the next 30 days and then make fresh all the time. But obviously, the fresher the base, the more nutrient-rich content it is. So if you have the time to make it fresh all the time, please do. This is also about efficiency so that you don't get tired of cooking for your family. You want to make things nice and quick and efficient. You shouldn't spend all day in the kitchen just to make your meals. So it doesn't matter what you start with next. They're all going to cook about the same temperature. As long as you've got your carrots cooked up some, then we can add some celery. And if you want to get it steaming in there, and put the lid on it for a second. This is more onion. I also do recommend you do that. You can add a little bit of moisture after you get this all sauteing. We want to caramelize it, so we do want to saute it. But you can add a little moisture to it when we add the bouillon, and that will help provide some steam in there and make sure that everything gets nice and al dente before we add it to the blender. You can use a regular blender or a Ninja. The problem is that they really don't process as fine as the Vitamix. You can make flour from grain with this machine. It is a bit expensive, but they're guaranteed for 8 years and 15 if you buy it from Costco. And I've only need to replace a pitcher. I've had them for 20 years and they work as good as day one. Before that, I was probably replacing my blender every year, I would say. So it doesn't take long to pay for itself if you're actually replacing your blender every year. So I've got that rolling pretty good now. I'm going to add just a little bit more oil. There's another option with avocado oil. If you'd like to use even less, you can get a spray bottle like this that kind of mists it around. You'd be surprised how much that cuts your oil intake. All right, next we're going to add the onions. Now that we've got that rolling pretty good, don't put everything in at once. Get that cooking, get it rolling, get it steaming in there and sauteing before you add more ingredients. I think that what I'm going to do is actually add the ginger next. Get that going. Timer cooks pretty quick actually. But since we've got the pan really rolling, we can start adding everything. It doesn't necessarily need to cook for much longer. Onion's going to slow things down because there's a lot of it. And I told Kai I was going to do a small batch of this richness, and I'm already overloading the pan. So we're gonna divide it into 2 pans. My eyes are always a little bigger than I expected when it comes to cooking. I'm so used to cooking in catering and restaurant settings that it's hard for me to cook small amounts of anything. I just get boom, 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 and I process food very quickly. So I always overload the pans, and I'm always think I'm in a commercial kitchen cooking for an army. So again, this base, you can't cook too much of it because you're going to store some, and once you get used to utilizing it, you're going to want to pull it out and dump it in almost every savory dish you have. So you can't have too much on hand. And I really want people to try to strive to get away from quantities of stuff. You'll feel it out as you cook. My whole life I've been cooking. My parents actually used to padlock my door at night to keep me from coming out in the middle of the night and preparing food for the dog and I. They were afraid I might set the house on fire or something. So it wasn't encouraged that I stop cooking. They just didn't want me to cook in the middle of the night. But from cooking my whole life, what I did is I'm a resource plant chef. So I look for what resources are available in the kitchen. Even if it ends up being a can or a frozen thing of something, I'm looking at the resources I have. So I'm not really the make a list, recipe, shop, and cook that recipe. It's just not my bag. And I think that's part of the inefficiency of most people's cooking at home, is that they feel they need to follow some chef's recipe. It's not important. The more often you cook freehand and from resources, the healthier your meals are going to become, because you're using freshness rather than stuff turning bad in the fridge and wasting it because you went and bought ingredients for some other meal. You utilize what's in the fridge and what's on hand on the shelves. Absolutely, you will be more efficient in the kitchen. You'll save yourself a lot of money and time. And how much of each thing is not really that important. When you're using fresh ingredients, it's hard to really over-empower the stock. You could add double this much garlic or double this much ginger, and it's just going to make it a little richer in one area or another. It's not going to destroy the infrastructure of it. Now, too much salt, or maybe not enough base, I'm going to call it bouillon, into this base, yes, you could become too salty. However, because it's a base, you can adjust how much you're adding to that soup so that you could bring that salt content up or down as you're making the soup. So it's very simple to do that. It really is not that important at this point in the stage of how you cook. So try to be loosen up, and let's focus on just cooking what you have, and let's not focus on how much. Let's just make enough for the family with a few leftovers for a few people the next day, maybe some lunches to go. So as soon as this pan gets hot, I'm going to transfer some of that since I've overloaded the pan. Again, your fresh herbs aren't important, but I love using them. So I'm going to add a little bit of rosemary. I'm going to add a little bit of cilantro to this base just to kick up the flavor a little bit. And of course the nutrients, the most important part. I would love people to be more excited about nutrients than flavor. Flavor comes from nutrients. So if you get in the habit of focusing on your nutrient content, flavor will come automatically. And you won't really need to be so worried about how to make things flavorful. Okay, got that, some of that blended over. I'm going to add the last of the garlic, last of the ingredients, onion, garlic, and the golden turmeric. My favorite. Ginger and turmeric are my favorite foods in the world. Okay, got that rolling pretty good. I'm going to add some of the herbs, and I'm going to add this bouillon. How much of this to use? Well, again, if it's too salty, remember that it's a base, so you're adding it to something else. No one's really eating this base pure, so it's not so important. I would be pretty liberal with this because I've got a lot of base going on here. It'd probably be enough to make the same amount, maybe a little bit more. This is what I would put in probably 2 gallons of soup. So again, it's pretty rich, but it depends on how flavorful you want it. You can add as much as you like. This is going to be semi-salty, not super salty, because this is almost like pure salt. So by adding more isn't going to make your dish really salty. It's just going to add a little bit more flavor and make it a little bit more salty. So I think you're going to find it very user-friendly to use. Once you get in the habit of making it and using it a few times, you're going to realize what I'm saying is true and that it's really not important how much of each quantity you're using. Same thing with the base when you're adding it to soup. You can add some, stir it up, get it going, try it, go, oh, I'd like a little bit more salt, and go get the base and add a little bit more. And it's just going to add more flavor plus a little bit more salt. If you make your product, if you feel that you add too much, and it actually does, I think it's a slim chance that you add too much and make it extra salty, but if that does happen, you can always add more plant milk or water or whatever stock it is that you're using. You don't really need to use stock with this because you're getting all of that you need in here. You could use a can or a bottle of vegetable stock if you'd like, but it's not really necessary. It will just make it a little bit more flavorful for you, maybe. And it'll add a little more salt because obviously stocks have quite a bit of salt in them usually. But my goal with this is to get you away from using a salt shaker. Throughout the series here, we're going to teach everyone how to wing them away from the salt shaker and the sugar and the processed foods and really focus on doing everything that you can from scratch. It's important to get that nutrient-rich content out. So, we've got this one almost ready to roll. Go ahead and add the herbs, which again are optional. I just happen to have some in my hand, so we're going to throw them in. And then our base. This vegetable bouillon, you can use any bouillon. I just prefer vegetable myself, obviously. I'm going to use the last of this jar. There's probably about a fourth of a jar. There we go. I get this at Costco. I'm a big Costco fan. And it's pretty reasonably priced at Costco too. So I'm going to add some water to the jar to rinse it out. And then I'm adding that to the vegetables, get them steaming. This will help to cook them al dente and more evenly. Look at that. Yum. I just want to eat the base. I don't recommend it though. It is tasty, but it's really rich. It's very rich. So this recipe, this whole mirepoix thing, it's French, and it's pretty much the starter for soups, which is where I got it from. But they didn't really add turmeric and ginger. It was more of a celery, onion, garlic, carrot thing, which is where I learned it many years ago. Old mirepoix. Something we've been doing forever over there in France. So I just kicked it up a notch. All right. Better than bouillon is in there. It's all steaming. We're almost ready to take it to the processing Vitamix machine, and I'm not going to do that on the show because you can know how to do that. It's also a really loud machine. But what we'll end up with is a dense, thick. I'm going to shut these down because I believe it's nice and al dente the way we like it. You don't want to overcook this. Just want them kind of a little bit crispy, but not too much, so they process well. And Vitamix will shred it into a nice puree that's just cooked lightly. And there we go. It's going to look like that. It's like baby food, which, as we know, baby food is just pureed fruit and vegetables. So it doesn't get, it would be more nutrient rich if you made it yourself because it'd be less processed. I made most of my baby food for both of my children. It's very easy. I don't know why anyone buys it unless you're traveling and you need the convenience. It's just getting a Vitamix, al dente, steaming some vegetables. Maybe not, it depends on the baby. You're starting them out, you want to cook it more, obviously. And then as they get older, you can go more al dente. And then pureeing it, a little bit of water, and there's baby food. It's that simple. And you could buy the vegetables. I mean, I'm buying organic vegetables from Costco right now because we're still coming off of winter. But if you can get to the farmer's market and really get fresh, organic or local produce, it will make all the nutrient-rich difference in your foods. So, I think that wraps it up. I'm just going to add this to the Vitamix, and I'm going to puree it, and we will end up with the same base that I made the other day on Tuesday on our live show. But we had a little audio difficulty, so we decided to redo it and repost it. So this is actually Tuesday's show. Next Tuesday, we are going to start with some simple breakfast foods, plant-based breakfast foods. I can't stand to see people serving candy cereals to their children. It's so detrimental to their learning in school and focusing. So we're just going to teach you a couple simple, fun, healthy, tasty things that the whole family will enjoy. I'm going to do some chia pudding. We're going to do some oats, but not oatmeal like you're used to, because I know everybody kind of porridge. Some of the kids are really down on it. I'm going to make something more interesting. I think that you might be able to pawn off some oats on them. And I'm going to show you to do all that plant-based, so they're really nutrient rich. And so that's it. I hope you enjoyed and this was helpful for you. Come back and see us anytime, every Tuesday at 5. Sorry. Have a good day. Thanks for joining, Chef.